The 60-minute show last night reminded us of the chaos and dysfunction that was the hallmark of the Gillard government. The fact is that Labor chose to replace a honourable speaker in Harry Jenkins with Mr Peter Slipper, and that is why we are here today, because the actions that became known about Mr Slipper have caused 2.5 years of trauma and heartache to James Ashby. If Labor hadn't decided to replace Harry Jenkins with Peter Slipper, we would not be here today. Let's also consider the other reasons we're here today. There's been allegations made about sexual harassment against Peter Slipper, which Mr Ashby aired again last night. Mr Ashby settled an action with the Commonwealth for a sum of money, and those allegations were then not pursued in the federal court after an appeal process. There's also the fact that Mr Slipper has been found guilty of fraud against the Commonwealth and is awaiting sentencing. That is the outstanding matter. I stand by all the statements that I have made previously over the last 2.5 years, and I'd remind everyone that these matters have been aired uphill and down dale for the last 2.5 years at least. Those were that I had no specific knowledge of the allegations that Mr Ashby made against Mr Slipper before I read about them in the newspapers, and that I did not know about the action he was taking in the federal court until I read about it in the News Limited papers one Saturday morning. Those statements were true then, and they remain true now.
Did you have, if you had no specific knowledge, what knowledge do you have, and how did you obtain it?
Well, I had no specific knowledge of the allegations that Mr Ashby later made that were contained in his affidavits in the federal court. Of course, rumours always circulate around Parliament House in Canberra, and rumours have circulated about Peter Slipper for some time. So I was generally aware of the tenor of the rumours that were circulating, but I had no specific knowledge of the allegations.
Did you meet with Mr Ashby before he made public his allegations against Mr Slipper?
Well, I had 3 meetings with Mr Ashby, which I've detailed before. The first was when I met him in Peter Slipper's office, very briefly. The second was when I shared a drink with him and another staffer while I was waiting for Peter Slipper to come back from the adjournment debate when he was the Speaker. And the third was when he came to collect a couple of bottles of wine that the then Leader of the Opposition had signed for a retiring staff member. And that conversation was the crux of my involvement aired last night on 60 Minutes.
Did you confirm an offer of a job within either the state or federal LNP with Mr Ashby at the meeting in your office?
When I had a brief meeting with Mr Ashby, we discussed the fact that the Queensland state election was coming very soon. He indicated that he was uncomfortable in Mr Slipper's office, and I indicated to him that if we won the Queensland state election, that would be a chance potentially for him to get out of Mr Slipper's office. But the fact is that there was no job ever provided for Mr Ashby, and he admits that himself last night.
Did you lead him to believe that there would be a job provided for him?
Well, Mr Ashby did not get a job from the coalition, either from the Queensland LNP or the federal government.
But did you lead him to believe that he might?
Certainly my intention was never to lead him to believe that a job would be provided to him, but obviously if we won the Queensland state election and then subsequently the federal election, when you are in government there are a lot more jobs available than when you are in opposition, and if he felt uncomfortable in Mr Slipper's office, that would be an opportunity for him to get out of the office.
Did you intimate to him that a lawyer...
Sorry, President? Your decision harm that Mr Slipper made that you by him. You say he felt harassed and aggrieved.
Well, as he said last night in the 60 Minutes show, and I think we should point out that Mr Ashby's been through quite a trauma for the last 2.5 to 3 years. I thought he was very courageous last night in telling his story. He came across as a very decent person who wants to put that unhappy period behind him, and I think the whole country wants to put the unhappy period of the Gillard government behind it. And therefore, when he came to see me, as he indicated, it was a brief meeting. I didn't have the knowledge that I do now about what he was talking about.
He never expressed it to you?
I certainly did not know about the allegations that he was subsequently made against Mr Slipper. Did I know that he felt uncomfortable in Peter Slipper's office? Yes, I did. And that would not have been unusual because of the rumours that had circulated about Mr Slipper for some time.
Did you raise those rumours with him?
No.
Did you intimate to him that a lawyer would be provided to him?
Mr Ashby said last night on the 60 Minutes program that it was made very clear to him that there would be no job and that there'd be no lawyer. And in fact he got his own lawyers and he took his own actions in the federal court, and the rest is history.
But at a meeting in your office, did you ever intimate to him or confirm an offer to him of a lawyer?
Well, no solicitor was provided to Mr Ashby.
But did you intimate to him that one might be?
I spoke to Mr Ashby briefly, and we canvassed the fact that he felt uncomfortable in Peter Slipper's office. Obviously, it would be very sensible if he felt that he was uncomfortable, and as it turned out he made allegations about sexual harassment. It'd be very sensible for him to get good legal advice. He subsequently did get good legal advice, but I did not provide it.
Did you give him the impression that you would organise legal advice for him?
That was not my intention, no.
But do you think you did give him that impression?
No, I don't believe I did.
Did you say to him he's afraid?
I'm sorry.
Did you tell Mr Ashby that you would discredit him if he ever tried to discuss the meeting that you had?
Obviously, as the manager of opposition business, I had a relationship with the Speaker and his office, which was important to maintain. Remember that Mr Slipper had been a Deputy Speaker and then was the Speaker. The manager of opposition business spends a lot of time in the Parliament, in the chamber, and given the circumstances of him replacing Harry Jenkins, obviously one of my roles was to maintain a relationship with the Speaker and his office. So if I did make those remarks, it would have been to indicate that it would be best if Mr Slipper wasn't aware that his staff was in my office telling me that he felt uncomfortable in his office.
Did you threaten to call him a pathological liar publicly?
Well, I certainly would not have used that language, and I would have indicated that when the Speaker's staff were in my office telling me that he felt uncomfortable, that would affect my relationship with Mr Slipper as the Speaker if that became known.
Are you prepared to...
Somebody's lying here. Who is it?
Well, I don't... Mr Ashby made it clear that nobody was lying, and I watched the program last night. I felt that he was a courageous young man standing up for his interests, and
Surely someone's lying.
I don't think that is the case. And
Well, if he's not lying,
sometimes
he must be telling the truth.
Sometimes people misinterpret conversations that are made and that are held, but let's understand the fundamental issue here. The fundamental issue is that now Mr Ashby made allegations against Mr Slipper about sexual harassment. They were settled in an out-of-court settlement with the Commonwealth and then subsequently not pursued further down the track after an appeal process. Mr Slipper was also accused of fraud against the Commonwealth, and he's been found guilty of that and awaits sentencing. But the Australian public deserve a government that is getting on with the job of governing. I'm trying to bring about reforms in higher education, which I think will be very important to the country. And I'm about, subsequently, after this meeting, after this press conference, I'm going to China and Laos in order to sell international education and meet with the Chinese ministers of education and others. So we are getting on with the job.
With you, Mr Pyne, where you concede that he may have been given the impression that legal advice may be provided and that a job may be provided, then it stands to reason that he raised with you the prospect that he'd be making allegations against Mr Slipper.
Well, I haven't admitted that, and I'm not going to have you put words in my mouth, Tom. I haven't admitted that. I've told you exactly my recollection of that conversation, and I've also said that I stand by my two very clear statements that I've made for 2.5 years. That is that I had no specific knowledge of the allegations Mr Ashby subsequently made, and that I was not aware of the sexual harassment case that he was then to lodge until I read it in the News Limited papers.
Well, he signed a stat dec. Are you prepared to sign a stat dec as well?
Well, I don't think it's in the interests of the country or the public for there to be a constant trawling over of a 2.5-year-old story. The reality is Mr Ashby wants to move on from this story. He's told his story on 60 Minutes, and I think the public deserve us to move on from a story that has been a reminder of the sordid, despicable nature of the Gillard government, the chaos and dysfunction that we were put through for 3 years. We want to get on with the job of governing, and I intend to do just that.
Clearly Ashby has raised these further questions that we really need to settle. So is he a pathological liar or is he not?
I'm sorry, you might want to repeat that question.
Well, by going on 60 Minutes and raising these issues, we have not gotten to the bottom of this. It is an old story, but we need to put it to bed. So is he a pathical liar, or is he not a pathological liar?
I'm certainly not going to add to the hurt that Mr Ashby has already suffered for at least 2.5 years, probably closer to 3 years. He's been through a trauma, and I don't think that either he nor the Australian public want to trawl over the details of this sordid story again and again and again. I'm not going to play tit for tat with anybody in this debate. I feel a deep sense of sorrow that Mr Ashby went through what he went through, and I think he deserves to be allowed to get on with his life.
Did you speak about the details in terms of providing Mr Ashby a job or a lawyer with either the Prime Minister, Mal Brough, or Wyatt Roy?
Well, I have lots of conversations with my colleagues about all sorts of matters. As manager opposition business in the House, colleagues sometimes come to me when they have staff issues or that they're aware of staffing issues. If they did that, then I would provide them with the necessary information to be able to meet their responsibilities. Now, if that was the case, then it would be the normal and correct thing for me to do, to provide that kind of support and information to my colleagues.
So
but I'm not going to breach their privacy.
Did you provide that information to Tony Abbott?
Mr Abbott and I have lots and lots of conversations. We're aware of rumours about Mr Slipper. Well, everybody in Canberra, in Parliament House, were aware of rumours about Mr Slipper going back many years.
Did you suggest to him that the LNP may provide a job to Mr Ashby?
Did I suggest that to Mr Abbott?
Yes.
No.
Did you ask him about it? Did you raise it with him?
No.
What about with Mal Brough?
No.
Are you willing to categorically deny that you had any knowledge of this before it hit the papers?
What I've said is that I had no specific knowledge of the allegations. I'm quite prepared to repeat that statement today. I had no specific knowledge of the allegations. Well, it means I wasn't aware of the allegations, the nature of the allegations. Now, the nature of the allegations, told again last night by Mr Ashby, detailed in his affidavit, are particularly unpleasant. I'm not going to repeat those.
You say you were aware that there were rumours circulating and you were aware that he was unhappy in his office. You discussed this issue with him in your office, is that correct?
Well, Mr Ashby came to my office to collect a couple of bottles of wine that Tony Abbott had signed for a retiring staff member.
Did you raise with him the issue of his discontent in his office?
No.
Did you discuss the rumours that you concede you were aware of about his discontent?
No.
So it wasn't raised at all?
He indicated to me that he was uncomfortable in Peter Slipper's office.
Did you ask why?
No.
You didn't ask why?
Well, no, I didn't.
Does that strike you as unusual that you wouldn't ask why he's uncomfortable in his office?
The specific allegations that he's made against Mr Slipper have been detailed in his affidavit, in the court case, in the subsequent court case involving fraud against the Commonwealth, which Mr Slipper's been found guilty of. He detailed them again last night in the 60 Minutes show, I thought very bravely. Did he raise those specific allegations with me when he came to pick up those couples of bottles of wine? No, he didn't.
What about the allegations against you, though? Why would he think that you were prepared to call him a pathological liar?
You seem to be a bit stuck on that particular question. I think what I've indicated is that I had an ongoing relationship with Peter Slipper as the Speaker. As the manager of opposition business in the House, one of my jobs is to get along with the Speaker, and the fact that if Mr Slipper had been aware that his staff member had visited me to collect 2 bottles of wine and indicated that he was uncomfortable in that office, that might have impacted on my relationship with Mr Slipper. Now, as it turned out, Mr Slipper's tenure as Speaker did not last very long for the reasons that we now know, and really Labor need to answer the question.
So that was a threat.
Why did Labor think that replacing Harry Jenkins with Peter Slipper was a good idea, and what's been obviously learned is that it was a very bad idea.
So that was a threat against Ashby in order to protect the relationship with Slipper?
No, I wouldn't characterise it in that way, no.
This is affected your reputation. Are you going to sue Mr Ashby?
I have absolutely nothing to sue Mr Ashby about.
If in your position at the time you were aware that Mr Ashby had allegations against Mr Slipper, would you consider it appropriate to offer legal counsel or to pay for legal counsel through party funds or to offer a job within the party? Would you consider that an appropriate helping hand to someone in that position?
Well, as Mr Ashby indicated last night, and as was clear from his affidavit in the court, he was offered no inducement at all to take the action that he took. That is a very important point, and I'm glad you've raised it, Tom. Mr Ashby also indicated that he didn't speak to me again at all about this matter after the meeting in my office to collect the 2 bottles of wine. Never discussed it with me again. What then happened, as we now know, is that he approached other members of the LNP in Queensland, and Mal Brough has outlined his position, and Mal Brough, as a member of the LNP, took it upon himself to assist Mr Ashby, and as he has said, he felt that it was his duty as a citizen and as a human being to protect and help somebody who was clearly in difficulty, and after that, that matter was entirely out of my hands.
But it's clear that he came away from that meeting or that discussion in your office, bottles of wine in hand, with the impression that he would be given a job and the impression he would be given legal counsel, or that his legal counsel would be paid for. You've conceded that that's a reasonable impression for him to have garnered. Can you tell us specifically what you said to him that gave him that impression?
Well, he subsequently had a meeting with David Russell, which has been made clear, and which David Russell indicated to him that there would be no job and that there'd be no legal support.
But why did he have that impression when he left your office?
Well, Mr Ashby has outlined his story last night. I think that has been canvassed uphill and down dale. And
sure, but can you just tell us what you've said that he may have misinterpreted as an offer of a job or of legal counsel?
Well, I think I've covered that subject, and as I've also said,
I'm not unclear on it.
Well, I'm not unclear on it, and I think that the public are quite clear about a couple of things. They're absolutely clear that Labor should never have replaced Harry Jenkins with Peter Slipper. They're absolutely clear that if they hadn't done that, if Labor hadn't done that, we would not be standing here today discussing what has been a traumatic period for James Ashby, and they bear the blame for that. Other members of the coalition have assisted Mr Ashby, and that has been on the public record, because they felt that he needed support, and he was never offered a job. He was never offered legal counsel. He made that clear himself last night. And I'm not going to get into a tit-for-tat argument about parsing every sentence and every paragraph of interviews made by other people.
Is there a case now for another inquiry into this? Do you think this should go somewhere higher just to clear the air?
No, I don't think so. The only outstanding matter in the sorry affair of Mr Slipper's speakership is the sentencing of Mr Slipper for fraud against the Commonwealth. I mean, that's where, at the end of the day, there are 2 core issues. The allegations of sexual harassment, which the Commonwealth settled with James Ashby when Labor was in power, and the fraud against the Commonwealth, and later this month Mr Slipper will be sentenced.
Do you have an understanding of Mr Roy about the sequence of events here?
Sorry?
Do you and Mr Roy have an understanding of these sequence of events too? Have you referred to what's happened?
Well, Mr Roy and I are good friends, and he's a valued colleague, and of course he will answer for himself about his involvement. But if I'm approached by a colleague who indicates that they need some support because of a staffing issue, my responsibility is to help that colleague, and of course that's exactly what I did.